It is a great day to be alive, and I am so thankful for God, Jesus Christ, who lives in us. In today's video titled, Derailed Negotiations and Israel Strikes Iran, the question outstanding is this the beginning of World War III? Before we get started, I'm not a financial advisor. Nothing that I'm sharing is financial advice. I'm simply sharing dreams, visions, and interpretations that I feel God has given me as it relates to crypto. Now, let's get into the video. So is this the beginning of World War III? As you guys know, I have shared many videos as it relates to war, dreams, and different things that I feel God is leading me to as it relates to this topic of World War III. Not only that, I pointed out a lot of symbolic indicators that I feel could be confirming of what is to come in the waking of this next market crash, which I shared that trains and derailing of trains is symbolic of that coming market crash. And then again, dreams that God has given me, being informed that a war was coming. So with all this talk about trains and shared talks about World War III, let's get into what's new in the symbolic implications that I've seen. And at the end of this video, if you want to go back and check out all those other videos that I shared about trains, derailment, dreams about World War III, all those videos will be posted at the end of this video. So U.S.-Iran nuclear negotiations derail over schedule clashing. The first thing that I saw in this particular headline was derailed. When I saw that, I looked at that as an implication or a symbolic pointing to this coming market crash. So the question is, how close are we? Also, in previous videos, I shared some derived dates, and two of those dates were based on two dreams that I had. One having to do with an invasion of Iranian individuals flying in on parachutes with Iranian flags all over them. And the other dream had to do with, or me hearing rather, the name Charlie Sheen being repeated over and over again throughout various dreams. And me coming to find out that Charlie Sheen was an actor in this movie called Red Dawn. So it was obvious to me that God was giving me an understanding that something was going to take place with Iran. And in my mind, because I saw them parachuting down to where I was, it seemed as if it was an invasion on U.S. soil. The derived dates that came from these two dreams were May 20th and 21st and May 31st of this year. The dates from the Iranian dream came with news about intelligence suggesting that Israel is preparing for possible strike on Iran nuclear facilities. And on May 31st, news came out that Iran had stocked up on more uranium. So with both dates, we see news about Iran. One is warning about a possible strike on Iran by Israel, and the other date coming with news about the problem that Israel is having with Iran due to nuclear weapons. So those two dates we crossed off the list already as far as seeing the unfolding for those two derived dates. And so moving into June, we saw news about the U.S. to partly evacuate embassies in Iraq over security threats because of the tension in the Middle East with Iran. And because of those tensions, there was more news that came out about Israel considering military strikes on Iran. So that was June 11th. And then on June the 12th, after much warning about getting people out, later on that day, we heard news about Israel attacking Iran's nuclear facilities. Now, it had been said by Iran that if Israel decided to strike their facilities, that Iran would blame the U.S. for that. That was a part of the news that came out on the 20th, the date that I derived from the Iran invasion dream. And now that we see these strikes being carried out, what's next? So is this the beginning? I've shared, of course, you guys already know the different situations where the U.S. has been involved directly or indirectly when it comes down to wars. And although there's so much going on right now with trade wars, what's been going on right now between Israel and Iran has stolen the show. And so again, is this the beginning? And these are the two wars that have been on my mind simply because they came to me in a dream. The dream again about the Iranians parachuting down, and then the dream above that had to do with me being told that a war is coming and me seeing World War II or World War III. The wording was covered, so I couldn't see the entire thing. And in that dream, me seeing the colors blue and yellow along the sides of this enormous door, will one or both of these move us into a situation where we are hearing talks about us being involved in a World War III, or will it actually come to that? Like the wording covered in the dream, it may or may not say World War III. We may or may not be involved in World War III, but could things get very close? With that being said, I want to bring up another dream that I had that I've already shared in a previous video, and I cannot find which video I had this in. But in this dream, every time I saw these two blue eggs, one had a crack in it, I heard a war horn, what I'm calling a war horn, being blown. And these are the same two blue eggs that I saw in a previous dream that I had in August of last year. And just as God has shown me, all these things tie in and come together to create one big message or many messages. But in this dream, every single time I saw these two eggs, one of them was cracked and I heard a horn being blown. So what I want to do is quickly derive a date here, and with each egg, just label them. So the first egg, because this is about war, will be the egg that will be labeled Ukraine and Russia to represent that war. And the second egg, S2, will represent Israel and Iran. So now moving on, as I share in another video, how that this XRP key is what I have been using to derive XRP dates. And these two blue eggs are a part of that, along with several other indicators. Going back to the original dream, there were two more eggs within that frame, and there were yellow and red. And those two are a part of the October 17th key because of their colors. So essentially within this frame, to interpret it one way, I'm looking at XRP and I'm looking at something to do with Israel and a market crash and the collapse of something. It could be a government, it could be a country. There are many talks about Iran not being able to stand after what has happened with Israel on yesterday. So a collapse. So moving on, because this is not about XRP, this is about war. I'm going to move down the XRP key. I'm going to look at the Julian calendar because we want to derive a date. None of the other indicators within this XRP key make sense to use right now. So going back to my red dawn dates, I'm going to take a look at the Charlie Sheen dream again, and I'm going to start there. And I simply added 13 days to May 31st because that's what the Julian date is. It's 13 days past that particular date. And that gave me a date of June the 13th, which is the exact same date that Israel struck Iran. For us, it was the 12th, but for them, it was the 13th. I don't think that that's a coincidence either. And here's a video where I shared the dream about the invasion of the Iranian individuals parachuting down. But also in this video, I shared another dream that I titled A Fall in Liberty. And I don't think it's a coincidence that I had these dreams about a day or two apart. Seeing multiple things in these dreams, I believe really is what caught my attention. Something coming out of the air. In the Iranian dream, of course, it was those individuals. But in the Fall in Liberty dream, I saw military aircrafts carrying all of these statues of liberty. And each one was dropping the statues down to the ground and they would break. I remember at the end of this dream walking down this street and seeing big chunks of the statue being next to me. So it's not a coincidence that God gave me these two dreams that look similar, similar situations with something in the air falling down. And I shared in the previous video how a fall in liberty signifies a loss or erosion of freedom or your rights or the principles of liberty. A situation in which someone's freedoms may feel suppressed or violated. This put me in the mind of what's going on in LA with all the protests that's been going on. These are people's opinions about what they feel surrounding the situation, their freedom, their liberty. So seeing the military move in on this situation in LA, to me, is symbolic of the aircrafts that I saw carrying the statues of liberty in my dream. In other words, some protesters may feel that their liberty is not on the ground, meaning that it's not present, their liberty or freedom to protest. The military aircrafts dropping statues of liberty or dropping that freedom and breaking them could be symbolic of how some protesters may feel about the military imposing on their freedom to protest. Their liberty has been broken because the military has now moved in. Now, this is not me commenting on what's going on in LA or giving my opinion. Not only do I feel that it's not a coincidence that I had these two dreams a few days apart, them being similar, and the fact that things were coming out of the air. I don't think it's coincidence that I'm seeing things with Iran happening the same week as things dealing with liberty and protesting stuff that's going on in LA. This moves us into the final part, talking about symbolic invasion of Iran as it relates to a flag, doing what some may feel to be a fallen liberty during protests. So now I'm looking at both dreams being combined into one situation here in the U.S. There are articles circulating that says Trump calls LA protest a foreign invasion. So why is he looking at this as a foreign invasion? Simply because of flags. At Fort Bragg, Trump says what you're witnessing in California is a full-blown assault on peace, on public order, and a national sovereignty carried out by rioters bearing foreign flags with an aim of continuing a foreign invasion of our country. And when I read that, I immediately thought about an invasion, symbolic invasion of another country on our soil based on his statement. And I pray, God, that that's the closest it gets, just a symbolic invasion and not an actual invasion. But again, we need to be praying about this stuff, seriously praying about what is happening over in the Middle East, praying for Israel, praying that what's happening is over soon. And not only that, you know, God step in and he changes the hearts of these people. I heard someone say that a person can change their actions, but if their heart is not changed, and that's true. The only person that can change their heart is God. So we are fighting a spiritual war on their behalf. My word tells me that the fervent prayer of the righteous availeth much. And so as we're praying about these situations, we're praying about these wars, we're praying about the things that God has been showing us on World War III, praying that it does not come down to that. But if in any case that it does, that we understand that God is going to take care of his people. And here are the videos where I shared derived dates. I shared these two particular dreams. I've also shared confirmations and things that I feel God has been giving me when it comes down to this topic of the coming market crash, this next coming market crash, as well as things that I feel are indicators that it's very close, that it's very, very, very close. Well, that is all that I have for this video. Until the next one, God bless.